everyone. Now it's time for part 2 of Awkward in the Elevator. My last video covered the sketch and the line art, and today we'll cover the whole rest of it. The coloring, the shading, textures, the whole deal. And we're just gonna get right to it. So here we go. I'm skipping ahead till after I'd put down the base colors, because that's pretty straightforward. Each color is on its own layer, so I can tweak it later. For the most part, I stole colors straight off of frame grabs and then fiddled with them until they looked good together. A few colors I took from my original color pencil drawing of Goslin, primarily for her eye color, which I applied as a gradient to kind of imitate the shadowing from her upper eyelid. Pro tip: just make one eye and then copy-paste it to guarantee perfect symmetry. Then I spent a while just fixing their eye lines. Eye placement is hard. If you get it just slightly wrong, then they end up wall-eyed or cross-eyed or gazing lovingly at their love interest's chin, Max. I put a darker rim around Gaz's eye by copying the iris I already had, enlarging it just slightly, and then coloring it a darker green. I've noticed real eyes have a dark ring around the edge like that, or at least mine do, so I tend to include it. Also popped back to my original drawing to see just how big I had made the pupils. Partly for design continuity, and partly because big eyes are seen as more appealing, which is why animation tends towards that so much, but it also makes characters appear younger, so I didn't want to make them so large that it made her look babyish. Then came blocking in the more complicated shadows. Each color is still on its own layer like I always do, and I do it messy because once I apply the Gaussian blur, it makes the edges transparent all the way around, which is great for where I actually want the gradient and awful for where I don't. Like, for example, just underneath her hair, I wouldn't want hair color, then a gap of her base color, and then the shadow. So, messy first, fix it later. I can't tell you how much Gaussian blur I apply, because it varies from picture to picture, as well as within each picture. I also play with the transparency, so I just kind of go with whatever looks right. In all of my pictures, digital and traditional, I make the whites of the eyes slightly gray. I tend to like the whitest part of a picture to be the eye highlight, and then the darkest part to be the pupil and the eyelashes to really make the eyes pop. The first thing you tend to look at when you look at a picture of anything with a face is the eyes. So since you're going to look there first anyways, I try to make it worth it. Glenn Keane, a very well-known Disney animator, has straight up said that if you're going to make a mistake in a drawing, don't make it in the eyes. I like to make eyes reflective. I figured that out during my stitch drawing phase, so now I add colored reflections to all of my eyes. It makes them look deeper somehow. Little secret about the color of Max's suit: if you look back at my original color pencil drawing, you'll see that Goslin's Negaverse costume is dark purple and forest green, and he's her love interest, so I put him in her colors. But I tweaked them a bit, because I wanted it to be kind of subtle. Besides, at this point in the story, he doesn't know about her double life anyway, so technically he probably shouldn't be wearing them at all, but it made me feel all clever, so I went with it. I always color my line art. It's amazing the difference it makes. Everything seems more 3D, like the line work is doubling a shadow. I'm wanting to learn watercolor, and I bought multicolored micron pens just so I can still have colored line work even in my traditional stuff. The one thing I did differently with this piece that I don't normally do in any of my other digital stuff is I merged all the line art onto one layer. normally I keep everything separate, but then to color it, I have to play a massive game of what layer is that on, as well as worry about the order the layers are placed in, so nothing of the wrong color overlaps. But since I knew I would be filming this, and knowing how much time my old way takes, I merged the line art layer, but now that means when I go to color the lines, I have to be careful that the colors start and stop at the right place, which you'll see here with me leaving gaps to come back to, such as when I was coloring where her shirt meets her jeans. Also, to pick the line art color, I tend to go just a little darker than the darkest shadow, which is why I color the line art after shading instead of doing it right from the start. Actually, adding highlights is something I just recently started doing. It makes an amazing difference, and I wish I'd been doing it the whole time. I still don't fully have lighting figured out. Light bends and does all kinds of weird things, so I mostly just guess where the highlight should go. I'm using the lasso tool to minimize overcoloring, and then a soft fuzzy eraser brush to smooth any jagged edges. I don't use this method with shadows. I don't fully know why. Habit, I guess. Also, I put way more shadows than I do highlights. I did a little mock-up of the elevator background off camera, mostly just to get an idea of how I even wanted the design of it to be, and then I just used it as a template to do the actual thing, which I just used the straight line tool and rotate tool to do. To find textures, I just went on Google. There's a function in the search filter to let you find reference material that isn't copyrighted, so I just browsed till I found something I liked. To make the wall panels in the elevator look beveled, I had a black line to start with, and then copy-pasted it, colored the copy white, placed it underneath the original black line, and then moved it over just enough so that you can see a hint of the white. You can use this technique for floor and ceiling tiles as well. For Gosling's shirt, I was trying to make it look like those old Jersey-style shirts. You know, the ones that are super soft and kind of thin and old and worn, and I'm not sure if I'm describing it right, but I can picture it so clearly from when I was younger. I think it was a thing in the 90s or early 2000s. Anyway, I went with purple because Goz wore purple as a kid. I was going for the whole nostalgia thing. Flipping through layer modes, that's why it goes all kinds of wonky here. I put Max in tweed. It seemed like the thing to do. He works for Scrooge McDuck, so I figured he'd look as businessy as possible. Real leather. Max is fancy. Tried to use the selection tool to speed up adding the pewter hardware. See how that worked for me. Cutting corners just ends in sloppy pixelated lines. Or more likely I was doing it wrong. Either way. That blue flash wasn't the computer malfunctioning. I placed a solid blue layer over everything and then lowered the opacity to like 3% to make all of the colors just a little cooler. I just like cooler colors in general. But by putting the same color over top of all of the other colors, it makes for better color harmony. There's those gaps I was talking about earlier. I wanted to change the outline color of the shirt without messing up the color on the jeans, but it's all one layer, so I gotta zoom in to do those parts that touch. Now it's time to talk hair. I've already mentioned before that I don't know how to draw hair, but I can color it. I can. Just look. Look it. Look. Oh my god, it's so soft you can brush it. And yet somehow I completely forget how to do it at the start of each new picture and have to completely reteach myself. Like, what is this? What am I doing? I am a talentless hack. Oh wait, there we go. Never mind. I remembered again. Gotta use the right brush. Gotta alternate between at least 5 colors. Don't be too heavy-handed with the stylus. Remember your lighting, and be patient. It will take a while. I'm sure you've noticed the blonde streaks in Gosling's hair. The reason for that is I was going for a Lindsay Sterling kind of thing. 'Cause I like her. It's just what I picture when I imagine that shade of red hair. I think Ginger Spice did it too. This is the cleanup stage. Now I'm just looking for stray pixels, missed coloring, and every time you see the line art flash, I am once again playing a rousing game of what the hell layer is that on? Almost forgot to detail the eyebrows. That would have been a shame. Adding my signature. To keep it from looking out of place, I always grab a color from somewhere else in the drawing. Final cropping. Don't want so much unused space around the edges. At this point, I really thought I was done. Adding my sig and final cropping are my last steps, and then I realized I'd completely forgotten to shade the background. Oh my god, I would have been so embarrassed if I'd released it like that. To put so much detail into the texture of every little thing, and then forget something so basic as shading the background? Newbie mistake. The next thing I did off camera because I forgot it, was to add a slight blur to the line art. Just like colored line art, it makes the shading look a little deeper. I put it on everything. To do it, I copy-paste the line art layer, put it underneath the original line art layer, and put just the slightest Gaussian blur on it. Just a touch. Too much just makes it look out of focus, but just enough gives it a slight 3D look. And now it's done. And there you have it, a full digital piece. Come back in 2 weeks where I will be doing an acrylic painting of Lilo from Lilo and Stitch on a corkboard because I collect Disney pins and I've decided it's about time to decorate my bin board. See you then. Bye-bye.